So today we are talking about breaking the cycle of feast and famine when it comes to love and money. Thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Zara Johnson. For those of you who aren't familiar with me or you're new, if you don't know, I've been in the relationship industry for 10 years. And over the last a little less than a year now, I launched the Love Loft, which has been my dream goal since 2019. We'll be diving more into that in future episodes, but there's so much I want to share with you today, so much I want to talk to you about, but we're going to focus this episode on breaking the feast or famine cycle in love and money. And this is something I'll be talking about a lot on this podcast. So make sure that you share this with your friends, with your family. It would mean so much to me if you leave a review of this episode because I'm going to be dishing out a lot of free content every single week. Jewels that are going to be so valuable to you. We're going to bring experts on, case studies, so much to help you understand how to get control of your patterns, how to rewire your subconscious patterns and your blocks is keeping you from the love and money that you desire and that you deserve. And I'm so passionate about this because love and money, first and foremost, are the two biggest challenges that most people face. How to get more love, how to get more money. Like these things are real issues and real challenges that everyone experiences at some point in time in life. Very few people go through life never needing to shift how they show up when it comes to love or money. And when we say love, we're not just talking about romantic love, we're talking about self love, family relationships, romantic love included, but overall, just the whole concept of being in alignment with the frequency of love, which is the receiving energy, the feminine energy, and then the money, which is connected and rooted to your self worth and your masculine energy, and finding the balance between those two. And when you're not balanced in those and you're constantly swinging between highs and lows in life and love and money, and you find yourself on this emotional roller coaster, it's because you don't have a healthy balance of the masculine and feminine. And because you have these patterns and these sabotaging wounds that are showing up, and every single time you get to that next level or you get to a new ceiling, you find a way to slip right back into your comfort zone and your old beliefs and your old habits. And it feels like no matter how hard you're working or no matter how much love you give, you keep creating the same outcome. And I know firsthand how exhausting that is. And everything that we're going to be talking about on this podcast is going to be helping you to overcome that. Now, one of the things that I really like to focus on are my signature 8 love loop patterns. And these are 8 different patterns that I was able to discover over my 10 years of helping people to attract partners and to get married through matchmaking and coaching. If you're not familiar with my coaching business, which is Captivating Courtship. And I've had a lot of success with those businesses and with helping people to find love and partners and to get married. And now they're having children and they're thriving. And now they come back to the love loft because they're like, I need to get to the root of this pattern for money. Because even in the relationship industry and matchmaking and coaching, through coaching, I would help them to shift their beliefs and their patterns, but I wouldn't always get to the root because that's not really what that was for. And we'll talk more about that in the future. But when it comes to stepping into their next level, what I often find with a lot of the women that I have worked with, and men too, because actually it was a man that actually first started bringing a lot of this to my awareness, a male matchmaking client that I had back in around 2015 and maybe 2016. Um, but if you don't get to the root of these things as you're going through life transitions, or you want to step into that next level, maybe it's a job promotion, maybe it's saving up for a big goal, maybe it's launching a business, whatever that next level is for you, it could just be living a life that feels more aligned, more free, more desirable. Maybe it's seeing yourself as a bigger version of yourself. Maybe it's finally having the type of relationship or family relationships or friendships that you desire, that you know you've been holding yourself back. It could be even if you are married or if you're in a relationship, those wounds and those beliefs are showing up that's not allowing you to show up as the version of yourself that you actually want to be. So you feel like a shell of yourself in some ways. They're not fully authentic, not fully in your worth. All of these things are rooted in your patterns. And when you allow these patterns to run the show, they are going to take over because your subconscious is simply running on autopilot. You're just running through life, operating in a way that you have always known to do. And until you get to the root of these wounds, until you get to the root of these patterns, until you learn how to reprogram and take a different route, your GPS, your internal GPS, when it comes to love and money, is always going to go the same route. It's always going to create the same outcome. So we want you to get off of that feast and famine cycle, because I know, like I said, firsthand, I know how painful and exhausting and frustrating it is. Now, in future episodes, I'm going to be talking about more about my story and my background with the love loft and visualizations and hypnosis and Reiki and sound and all of the different services that we use and that we provide. And that I incorporate into my coaching and just into everything that we do with the Love Loft. And I'm also going to get deeper into the 8 love loops, how I came about those, where did they come from, how I use them to work with clients. I'm going to talk more about that in the future. But today we're going to really just focus on exploring the emotional roller coaster that so many high achievers and entrepreneurs face when it comes to the feast and famine cycle in both their relationships and in their finances. Now, I want to target this to my high achievers and to my entrepreneurs specifically because that is a very unique group of people. Now, having a college education or having a degree doesn't necessarily make you a high achiever, and not having one doesn't mean you're not a high achiever either. Being an entrepreneur, being a high achiever, your personal growth and your ability to stretch yourself and your willingness to push yourself to your growth edge, it's constantly challenged. A high achiever, and how I'll be referring to high achievers on this podcast, a high achiever is someone who is always aspiring for more, always looking to grow, always looking to what's the next thing? What's the next edge? What's the next promotion? What's the next, apartment? What's the next house to buy? What's the next goal to achieve? I want to be better at relationships. I want to learn more about myself. I want to grow. If you're an entrepreneur, I want to grow my business to this next height. I want to add in this new product. I want to add in this new service. I want to challenge myself beyond my current limit. That could even show up when it comes to, let's say, working out or taking care of your health, like whatever it is. But I want you to understand, as you're listening to this podcast and when you're sharing this podcast with others, I want you to understand that not everyone is a high achiever. Not everyone is growth oriented. Not everyone's an entrepreneur. Even those who are highly successful and those who are highly educated, it doesn't mean that they value growth, or that they value personal development, or that they value pushing themselves to become a better version and that next version of themselves. So if you fit into that small percentage of people, first of all, I applaud you, because you are very unique in that. A lot of people get very, very complacent with life. They get very comfortable and they stop challenging themselves and they just keep doing the same thing over and over. And that's their patterns and where they're stuck. But simply by you tuning into this episode, by you listening and being on the email list, and you're tuned into the content and you're allowing yourself to be present in this moment, that tells me that you are my people. That tells me that you are someone that values more. So before we dive into this episode, I want to share 2 things with you. The first thing is, if you have not taken the Love and Money Transformation quiz, if you have not taken that quiz to figure out your emotional pattern archetype, your love loop archetype, then I want you to go to the Love Lofts, that's with an S, thelovelofts.com/quiz. I'm going to put the link in the show notes of this, so you can just go straight to the link. And I want you to take the quiz. and get clear on what your pattern type is, because as we are releasing episodes and sharing things about patterns, you're going to want to know what your archetype is so that you can easily identify it. The second thing that I want you to do, if you are a high achiever, if you are an entrepreneur, if you are someone who values growth, you are trying to get to your next level, and you also want to connect with other like minded people, I want you to go to the link in the show notes to join the Love Loft Collective. Now, the Love Loft Collective is the new community that is for high achievers and entrepreneurs who are trying to solve this very problem of getting off the feast or famine cycle, stepping into their next level, and breaking patterns while doing it. It's for those who value emotional intelligence, emotional awareness, and also improving their quality of life, getting to their growth edge, pushing themselves to become the next version of themselves. This is a peer support community. This isn't coaching. It's a peer support community where you can connect and network with other like-minded people, but I'll also be posting exclusive content inside this community. So you'll be able to offer peer support, post about your patterns, post about your goals, post about your challenges, create a safe space with me where you can align with other like-minded people and be on this journey to the next level together. It's no membership fees. This is just a basic community for you to be able to join, to network, and to have peer support. And you'll also get exclusive content, and you'll also be the first to know whenever we do have different trainings and just special offers for the Love Loft. You'll be the first to know. So make sure that you go to the link in the show notes and fill out the application to join the community. And yes, this is an application based because we want to make sure that we have the right people in there. We want to make sure that you are being in a community that's going to be loving and supportive and a high quality community. We're not just accepting everyone in. I have to say that because we want to make sure that it's a high quality community and that you are willing to not just only show up and learn, but also contribute your value to the community as well. So go to the link in the show notes to join the Love Loft Collective, and I can't wait to see you in there. So let's talk about what is the feast or famine cycle, because some of you may be new to that terminology and not exactly know what it looks like. And very short terms, feast or famine is when you're swinging between the pendulum of things being really, really great, whether that's in love or in money and finances or just like your social life, and things are going really, really great. And then you have these fall offs where things seem to be completely disastrous, right? And you're either high highs or low lows, and you have trouble with steadily progressing through life in a very consistent way. If that is you and it's something that you struggle with, then you have been operating in a feast or famine cycle and operating really from a place of survival mode. So, in love and in relationships, or even with self love, this can look like having an intense connection that burns out quickly. It could be love bombing followed by ghosting. It could be an over emotional investment that leads to detachment. It could be going really hard in your self care and showing up as this amazing version of yourself, but then you completely self abandon. This could look like self abandoning in relationships when you're doing really great and you're experiencing these high highs, and then next thing you know, it's drama and conflict. There's so many different ways that this can show up in your love life. Maybe you're currently in a relationship or you're married and you have these moments where you are just so high and so in love and so connected and so vulnerable. And then you have other moments where maybe you shut down and you withdraw and you operate from a place of fear, scarcity, fear of being seen, fear of connection, any of those things. But you're constantly swinging. And it's so exhausting when you're constantly in this feast or famine cycle when it comes to love. Now, in money, this could look like cycles of hustling and overworking, where you find yourself going super, super hard and burning yourself out and overworking to make money or to build a business, or showing up in the workplace going super, super hard. And then you find yourself crashing and burning out. And then through that, you may even go into a place of avoidance because you don't want to experience the burnout again. Maybe you find yourself constantly having rescue moments where you are constantly going through cycles of having your back against the wall. And you know how to go really, really hard when you absolutely need to financially. And then you just taper off and it goes right back to having low moments. So you're always going through financial ups and downs. And it just doesn't seem like you can maintain stability and steady progress. Maybe this means you're doing really great with saving and investing and your focus. And then after a few weeks or a few months, you're no longer contributing or you drain your entire account and you can't seem to just create sustainable investing, sustainable growth financially. Just being able to create inner security and peace when it comes to your finances and money. And you just keep going through these high highs and these unexpected lows, and it just is wearing you out. Now, the thing is that if you are in, let's say, maybe your late 20s, your 30s, your 40s, maybe even your 50s, this has become your norm. So these highs and lows, maybe you've always been a big procrastinator. And maybe if you were like me when I was in college, I used to wait until the last minute. Now I know that that's anxiety induced when you are doing this, but waiting until the last minute until you have an exam or you have a paper due, and now you're staying up all night getting it done, and you're writing a 20-page report in a day or two, and you're so proud that you're able to do that. You're so proud of that, but you never learn sustainable study habits that would allow you to not have to go through these burnout moments of exhausting yourself and trying to burn the midnight oil to get things done. So this is something that's very common. And really quickly, just a side note on that particular topic, something that I learned, I was watching the podcast, I think it's called the iced coffee hour. And there was I think he's a neuroscientist. I can't quite remember, sorry. But there was someone on there. And he was saying that for a lot of really intelligent people and a lot of high achievers, that they actually didn't do very well in college because they never learned study habits. And I completely identified with that because when I was younger, I never had to learn how to study. I was really smart, really good at school, and my parents just didn't invest in like making me have to sit down and do homework or study day in and day out. And so because of that, I didn't take notes. I didn't have to study. I would just kind of show up to class and listen and pay attention and basically memorize what I had to do, apply it, and I got good grades. But what he shared was when these kids get to about middle school, high school, and you can no longer rely on that, and you actually have to develop study habits, and you actually have the skills of consistency and knowing how to study and how to do schoolwork and how to apply this. The kids who actually struggled a little bit more, they needed that structure and organization, they actually tend to excel when they get to middle school, high school, and when they get to college because they've had years of learning how to develop sustainable habits. But for those who were just naturally really good at school and naturally very smart, and they didn't, and I don't want to say like naturally smart as if the others aren't, but they didn't rely on habits, on study habits in order to get good grades. They end up really struggling once they get to high school and college because now there's a different system that they need to know in order to succeed. So I thought that was really interesting because he was just sharing how a lot of gifted children and a lot of very smart children end up dropping out of college or not doing well in college or struggling, I'll say, to do well in college because they didn't learn these basic skills and habits that others did have to learn. So I thought that was very interesting. And that's directly reflected when we're talking about this feast or famine cycle versus steady, sustainable progress and growth to that next level. Now, like I said, when it comes to this feast or famine cycle, it probably feels really, really familiar. Really familiar to you. It might even be addictive. Like I said, I used to pride myself on I can go super hard when my back's against the wall, when things are tough, or especially financially. Like when, oh, my back is against the wall, I have to hurry up and come up with this money or hurry up and hit this goal. Or maybe even in business, I had to get off the launch model in business where I used to do launching. But what launching did for me as an entrepreneur, it would cause me to go super, super hard for a few weeks or about a month and bring in all this money in a short period of time, but then I would burn out. And then the thought of having to exert that much energy all over again, it just was not sustainable for me. It would cause me to self sabotage. It would cause me to avoid doing the things that I needed to do because subconsciously in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about all the energy that's going to be required and me not wanting to experience burnout again. And I've had so many examples, so many experiences with that, that now I can reflect back in retrospect and see where this feast or famine was showing up and how much I was self sabotage my next level, my growth, my business, my success, even in relationships, how I was self sabotage because of this feast or famine cycle. So it's very meaningful to me to help you with this and to share this information with you because you may be going through this right now. Maybe you've been operating in this space for years and it is something that can change. And we're going to work on this together. So even if you have been able to figure out how to operate in this space, and even if it has felt familiar or even addictive, you have to understand that these super emotionally intense, whether it's relationships or, how you're operating financially or in the workplace or any of those things, these highs and these lows, it's not really emotionally healthy. And you want to be in an emotionally healthy space. We want to be in a place where we're being able to manage in a steady state and make steady, sustainable growth past your growth edge into your next level. We don't want to create a false sense of momentum by going super hard and sprinting and then burning out. We don't want to have you making changes and self-sabotaging to go right back, right? We don't want you dropping 30 pounds and then after a few months you gain them all right back. We don't want that, right? We want to get off of that roller coaster and get into a place where you can eliminate as much self-doubt and as much distrust that is being caused by the feast and famine cycle, because that's what happens. You're going to get exhausted. You're going to get burnt out. You're going to not trust yourself because, you don't want to keep going through these intense moments and these low lows. And then you're going to just avoid doing the things that are necessary to get to your next level. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like when it comes to either love or money, you know exactly what you need to do? You know the next step that you need to take. You know the bill that you need to pay. You know the program you need to join. You know the decisions that you need to make, the boundaries you need to set, the conversations you need to have. You know what needs to happen in order for you to get to that next level, in order to, whether it's improve a situation or make a tough decision, maybe to walk away from it. Maybe it's a decision like, I know that if I just went on a 1 hour walk every day, I would be 20 pounds lighter, right? Just if you just did that one thing, but you just can't mentally take that step. Mentally and emotionally, there's a block where it's like, I know what I need to do. I know what I have to do, and I just can't pull myself to do it. If you are in that space, or if you have been in that space, that's how you know that there's something underlying that's causing you to avoid taking action. Maybe even there's a trigger that you just keep running into. Let's say, for example, let's say you're dating someone and you just know, I probably shouldn't send this text message. I shouldn't send this text message. I don't want to, but you just can't not do it. You're just acting off the impulse. And you know it's going to create the same outcome and the same thing that you have gone through in the past. If that sounds like you, then there's a trigger, there's a wound, there's a pattern that you need to shift. So let's talk about, why is this so uncommon? Why is so common, the feast or famine cycle? When we decide to unpack the deeper emotional reasons why you get stuck in the cycle, it mainly comes down to a few things. The first thing is your early childhood emotional conditioning around love or money. I know for me, I had so many different messages coming in around love or money growing up. On one hand, I'll divide it into, well, I had so many different messages. I was blessed enough to have a whole village around me growing up. So I had my father's parents, I had my stepfather's parents, I had my mom's parents, I had my parents. I was raised primarily by, I call my stepdad dad, but it was my mom and my stepdad. And so I had all these adults influencing how I saw love and money. Now, honestly, in the love department, I had a lot of positive influence when it came to love and relationships and marriage. But there were still some other things. I'm not going to get too deep into it in this episode, but there were still other messages that I picked up earlier. I'm talking about prior to age 5, which is when the subconscious is very open. There were other things that I picked up that also impacted how I saw love and relationships and saw myself in love and relationships. But when it came to money specifically, there were so many different messages that I picked up on in life. Now, if you are unfamiliar with the subconscious mind is most open between ages 0 to 7, but all the way up to 0 to 14. Now, I'm not a neuroscientist, but I will say I believe even up to age 25, before your brain is fully developed, there's still a lot going on that's you're taking in messaging about life. And the all of that up to age 25, I believe, has a great impact, because I can look back on some things that I didn't experience in early childhood, but I did experience after the age of 18, and I'll say between ages 18 to 25, that actually is where some of my patterns and beliefs came from, and it wasn't from my early childhood. But before the brain is fully developed, you're just navigating life, taking in messaging, taking in beliefs that often aren't your own. They could be from family, could be from the media, teachers, just everyone around you. And everyone processes and takes on messages very differently. And at the root of it, you're just trying to figure out how to survive and how to be loved. And so, whatever messages that you picked up on that would keep you safe, 'cause that's all we want as humans, is to be safe and to be understood. And whatever messages you picked up without you even knowing, right? This is why it's so fixed deeper into your subconscious. The messages that you picked up without you even knowing have such a great impact on how you operate and the things that you do on autopilot without even realizing. And so your early childhood relationships, and I know for mine, I had so many examples of money and what money looked like, and it was just all over the place. In a good way, right? Because I had my grandparents on my father's side, who they were what would probably be considered a little poor, right? Not poor, but my grandmother, she struggled financially. She didn't have a lot. She didn't own anything. She didn't own a car. She didn't own a house. She had a very modest 1-bedroom apartment that she had my entire life. Modest furniture. She was the sweetest, most loving. I mean, she would give you her last stack of crackers if you came over to her house. Like, she would do anything for you. She was so amazing, so sweet, just like one of the best women that I could have ever had around me, because she just was filled with love, even though she didn't have a lot of money. My grandfather, who they were not married, my grandfather, he worked for a factory. He worked for Campbell's growing up. So even though he didn't live in a good neighborhood, he owned his house, and he was very giving financially. He was financially stable. He had a good pension, good retirement. So he would always give us, every week he would give us an amount of money that was equal to our age. So if you were 10, you got $10, something like that. But he was very giving. He would always take us out for trips downtown to go and get something to eat at the Reading Terminal. If you're familiar with Philadelphia, you know what the Reading Terminal is. He would give us money every season. He would write us a check. Back then, it might have been, let's say it was $300. That was like a lot of money to go shopping with back then. But he would write a check and give it to my parents for us for school clothes or for um uh spring clothes, or just anytime there was a time to just give money and the kids needed sneakers or needed clothes. So he was really, really generous. He was very generous. He never held back. He really treated money like it wasn't a big thing. I never saw him complain about money. I never saw him stress about money. Now, my other set of grandparents, my mom's parents, I saw money be a conflict in their marriage, where my grandfather had some bad habits as far as like gambling and spending money. And my grandmother, she was, a little in her ways. I'll just leave it at that. And so they had a lot of conflict and a lot of drama where they lost their house at one point due to mishandling money. And so I saw them, they always owned property, they always owned their homes, but they went from moving into a really nice house in the suburbs, really beautiful house with a creek in the back and a big backyard, and it was set up on this beautiful hill. And then them having to leave that house and move back into the city, and it became a big issue. A very big issue in their marriage, and a lot of resentment and a lot of issues that came about that. But even with that, my grandfather, in that marriage and with us, he was very generous, especially to me. I was the youngest child, the youngest grandchild. Well, not the youngest grandchild. I was the youngest child out of my mom's children. And, he would do anything for me. He was very generous. He was very generous when it came to money and gifts and things of that sort. And my grandmother was the opposite. She would do things sometimes, but it was very much immodest. And she definitely had her views on my grandfather spending too much money on me. So that's another topic for another day. I'm sure we'll cover that at some point in this podcast. Now, when I fast forward to my dad's parents, and his parents and how he was raised, his parents were very, very, very generous when it came to finances. They were actually, to me, like the Cliff and Claire Huxtable. They were very fancy, very luxurious. At least my grandmother was. My grandfather, not so much. He was kind of a simple country guy. But my grandmother loved all the finer things in life. She loved luxury. She loved diamonds. She loved fashion shows. She loved custom furniture. She loved serving and making everyone around her feel loved. She loved the details, the extra touches, getting her clothes tailored to her body, getting her shoes and everything just like fitted just for her. She had her closet custom. She had my grandfather custom design a closet for her things. She was so meticulous, so particular. And she was just a very, very fancy woman. And so she served as an example of what's possible, of having beauty and grace and luxury. And again, money was not an issue. She was very generous as well. And she actually told me when I was growing up, she would say, if you like it, just get it. Don't worry about the price tag. Don't let price be a reason to stop you from having the things that you want. And she was the only person around me that would say these types of things and put these types of money messages in my mind, that it was okay to splurge. It was okay to do things for yourself. It was okay to spend money. It was okay to want nice things and to take nice trips and to really treat yourself as, a princess or a queen, or, someone who deserves to have the very things that they want, and someone who deserves to have these unique things. I remember one time when they went to Florida, and they came back, and she bought this $300 figurine. It was a fish statue that she saw when they were in Orlando. And it was like a very big deal. My mom's like, I can't believe she spent $300 on it. I can't believe she would do that. But to my grandmother, it was a piece that she wanted for her living room, and she saw it as valuable, and she saw that it was worth it. And so through her, I was able to observe value and having nice things and spending on yourself and going the extra mile, where I didn't see that mirrored in all of the other households and the other adults that I saw around me. Now, when we go back to my household and my parents' household and the household that I was raised in, I was raised in a I would say a pretty financially stable household. We didn't have a lot, but we always had. It's like we were lower middle class, maybe. Back then in the 90s and the 2000s, you didn't need a lot to sustain middle class living, but we grew up in a decent neighborhood. We grew up in a stable household. The lights were always on. The heat was always on. There's always food in the house. So we grew up in a stable household. However, the messaging that was deeply embedded in me that I learned from my household and my parents growing up was just enough. And that just enough messaging has been a constant thread throughout my life that I've constantly had to rework that programming and challenge that programming in order to overcome it. And it's something that I still have to be very mindful with today to break out of that habit. But just enough was a theme that was embedded when it came to money. Just enough money, just enough when it came to doing something nice for yourself. You don't do too much. You don't go for the thing that you really like. You don't go above and beyond. You don't spend the extra money. You do just enough. You can have just enough. Just enough pair of shoes. You have a black pair, you have a white pair, you have a red pair. What else do you need? Just enough. You make just enough money. You go to a restaurant that's just good enough. It may feel like it's a little bit nicer than the worst places, but you're not spending more. You're not challenging yourself to get out of your comfort zone. It's just enough. Like, we're going to Outback. We're going to Outback. We're going to a steakhouse. We're going to Outback. We're not going to McDonald's. But we're not going the extra mile and really splurging or spending on ourselves. So everything was just enough. And the messaging I was constantly getting from my mom, especially growing up, was that just enough was okay. You make just enough money, you get just comfortable, you do just enough for yourself financially, but you don't go over the edge. And there were so many messages that I picked up, and I'll be talking more about them on this podcast episode, but there were so many stories, so many times in my life where the opportunity, and I mean in childhood and in adulthood, the opportunity or different situations came up when it came to finances and spending money on myself or someone spending money on me and feeling undeserving of it, or even being told in some ways through my parents without them knowing that I wasn't deserving of more than enough. So I'll give you a really quick example before we keep going, because I know I've kind of been going off on a tangent. But I'll give you an example of where this just enough mentality, and just enough is always going to lead to feast or famine, because just enough is not going to allow you to be abundant. But here's a great example. So my father was in the Navy, and he would go up to the Air Force Base and go to their commissary to get stuff sometimes. And so there was this military, this is before Build-A-Bear, and there was this bear, and it was like a fancy teddy bear at that time. This was like the late 90s. And the teddy bear cost about $80 or $85. It was about $100 for this teddy bear. Now, back then, that was a lot of money for a stuffed animal. And my father bought it for me. And my mom found out. He came home and he was so excited about giving me this teddy bear. And I loved it. I was so excited about it. And when my mom found out how much money he spent on the teddy bear, she made a very big fuss about it. At one point, she kind of wanted him to take it back, but he didn't want to take it back. And she just kept saying, I can't believe he spent that much money on a teddy bear for you. I can't believe he would do that. Why would you spend that much money on a teddy bear? And she just kept talking about it, and it made me feel really, really guilty. Now, I know and I understand as a parent, right? Because I'm a parent too, so I get it. It will seem pretty frivolous, and it might not seem like the best thing to spend money on. But just in that, and her maybe wanting to save bills, I don't know the full story. Maybe they didn't have that extra $100 to spend on a teddy bear. Maybe it made her uncomfortable in different ways. Whatever the stories are, that those are her money stories. But me, as a, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11-year-old kid, that sent messages subconsciously to me that I wasn't worthy or deserving of it. And so it's little things like that. And of course, at that age, I'm not aware that that's what it's embedding, but it's little stories like that and it's little experiences like that that goes into your subconscious and teaches you how to interact with money. And so for me, that story of I'm not worthy of more, I don't deserve the nicer things, I can't have those things, I have to take less. It's not safe for me because I don't want to cause problems, I don't want to cause conflict, I don't want it to become a problem. This leads to how I made decisions as an adult. And so when you have these early childhood emotional conditioning around love or money, it stays embedded in your subconscious. Now, the next reason why it's so uncommon is because you're operating from a place of survival mode. And survival mode is when your nervous system is used to chaos. And when you're used to chaos, peace can feel boring or unsafe. You know how to operate in highs and lows. You know how to operate in chaos. And something that feels peaceful, this can definitely show up in relationships where if you find yourself getting bored or unattracted to those who like you, when you run from those that like you and you run towards those who reject you or those who make you work hard for their attention. This can show up if you're constantly going through highs and lows or feast or famine in money and in work situations, or you're constantly hustling because that chaos feels familiar and it feels safe, then that means you're in survival mode. So what feels steady and peaceful and boring, that is what that will feel boring to you. And the chaos is actually your comfort zone. And so the third way that this may show up is just simply through your subconscious beliefs around worthiness. So that could be that I have to earn love or success through effort and struggle. That could be whatever beliefs that you have developed over time that makes you think that you have to go through these feast or famine cycles. And I mean, so many different beliefs that you may have picked up. That could be, like I said, I have to work super hard for success, or I have to go through struggle in order to earn love or in order to earn money. It could mean I'm only lovable when I'm giving, only when I'm doing things for others, only when I'm people pleasing, only when I'm giving to others. That's when I'm lovable. It could be something like I can't hold on to money or connection because I'm not safe when I have it. So I just can't keep a relationship. I can attract one in, or I can attract a man or woman, or I can attract a partner, but I just can't keep one. Or I can attract connection, I can create the connection, but as soon as it gets too close, I have to push it away because that feels unsafe. So all of this is due to emotional dysregulation. And those highs, they feel good for a short term. But then eventually that scarcity starts to get reinforced and you step into fear. And that fear actually lasts longer than the highs and those short term highs. So you have to create that balance and even it out. Now, when we talk about the 8 love loops, and these are my signature pattern types, they came through my years of matchmaking and coaching and working with clients. So they're unique to me. These something that I've created. I'll talk more about how I discovered them in upcoming episodes, but the whole concept of these love loops is not necessarily about love specifically, but it is about these emotional patterns that's keeping you from the receiving energy. Whether it's receiving love or money, love and money runs on the same frequency. When we talk about love being the highest frequency, your highest connection to your creator, to your source, the further you are away from the frequency of love, you're operating in fear and scarcity and doubt and distrust and all of these lower emotions, you're not going to be open to receive. You're not going to be able to receive love. You're not going to be able to receive self-love. You're not going to be able to receive money. You're not going to be able to do any of that because you're operating from a place of low self-worth emotional patterns. And these are going to just keep repeating and keep showing up in life where you're just dropping high and low, dropping high and low. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the 8 love loops, I'm not going to get into all of those, but I will share what this could look like for a few of them. So let's just take the trophy chaser. The trophy chaser tends to overwork or overgive in order to prove their worth. And this typically leads to burnout or resentment. Now, the trophy chaser, that's always been my love loop that I've identified with the most, and the one that's always been something that I have to be mindful of and how it could be showing up when it comes to love and money. Now, for a romanticist, this could look like idealizing love or money, but they suppress their needs or their voice. And this could lead to emotional detachment or self sabotage. Now, idealizing could be because they're such romantics, right? This could be living in a fantasy and wanting to appear as the ideal wife or the ideal partner, or idealizing money and fantasy and what it could be, but not really taking the practical steps to have it. And when you're suppressing your needs, when you're suppressing your voice, you're not going to be fully authentic. You're not going to be allowing yourself to be supported. You're not going to allow yourself to be heard. And eventually you will emotionally detach or self-sabotage in order to keep yourself safe. Now, if you're Venom, for example, which you typically feel powerless, or you avoid responsibility, or you find yourself blaming others for the life that, or the money or the love that you haven't created, you'll find yourself creating inconsistent results in love or in money because you're placing that power in other people's hands. So all of these and all the other of the love loops, they all show up when it comes to love and money, and they mirror each other in a lot of ways. So if you are operating in these patterns, you have to unlearn this survival mode. You have to unlearn how you are showing up emotionally so that you can make different decisions. Now let's talk about what breaks this cycle and how you're going to do this, and the things that we're going to be talking about here at the Love Loft. And again, if you want to connect with other like-minded people who are on this journey with you, go to the link in the show notes to join the Love Loft Collective. It's a free community for high achievers and entrepreneurs. You're just going to complete the application. Once you complete the application, you'll have to book a very quick call just to make sure you're the right fit and that you understand the rules of the community, and then you'll be welcomed into the community. And like I said, this is a highly vetted community so that we are making sure to maintain the quality and the type of community that's going to set you up for success. So what actually breaks the cycle? The first thing that you need to do is raise your level of awareness. Awareness is the first step, and it's the most powerful step to making a change. You can't change what you're not conscious of. Now, by listening to this podcast, or even simply just by taking our quiz, that is your first level of awareness. You are allowing yourself to just challenge what you know in your current beliefs. You're raising your consciousness so that you can at least be aware of what problems exist. Now, the next thing that you need to do is focus on emotional healing. Emotional healing is absolutely essential. When you regulate your nervous system, you're going to stop being so addicted to emotional highs. You're going to learn how to process grief, heartbreak, or shame, or any of the feelings and shadows that are fueling scarcity and unworthiness. Now, the third thing that you need to do is build a new identity and belief system. You need to switch how you are viewing yourself, how you identify yourself, and create a new identity. This could look like, I deserve stability and peace. I am safe being seen, supported, and I'm successful in love and money, but shifting into a new identity. And identity shifting is so important because until you see yourself as a different version of yourself and create habits that are in alignment with a different version of yourself, you're not going to be able to sustain your next level. Yes, you can leap into it. Yes, you can attract it, but you want to be able to sustain it. And sustaining it means being a different version of yourself and creating new habits and shifting your identity, shifting how you see yourself. Now, the fourth thing that you want to do, as I just mentioned, was create daily safety and stability practices. You need to create new habits. You need to create a new way of being. You could do this through journaling, you can do this through visualization, but you need to practice worthiness embodiment. You need to practice holding boundaries, receiving support, receiving love, receiving money. You need to learn to practice slowing down and not constantly be in wounded masculine doing energy. You have to learn to shift and operate from a new place of being. Now, the last thing that I want to talk to you about today is your love and money are mirrors to each other. And this is very important. If you can figure out where there's a gap, where there's a pattern, where there's a belief in one area, you will find it directly reflected in the other. So if you just simply take some time, you can journal this out when you're done listening to this episode. But if you take the time to reflect on how unresolved wounds in love have been showing up and how you earn, spend, or save in money, or vice versa, you will find some common ways where maybe you're overgiving in love. Maybe you're undercharging or you're overspending. Maybe you're afraid to ask for what you want. Likely, you may even be afraid to ask for what you're worth. But you have to start figuring out, where is this belief, is this pattern, is this wound being reflected between love and money? Where is it showing up the same? Where am I embodying a version of myself that I need to let go of? I want you to share examples of this. Write it down in your journal and just begin working on how love and money shows up and where you see shifts that need to happen. So this can come up in so many different ways. Right now, for example, I'm thinking of a client right now where I'm so excited for her because she has been challenging herself to break outside of her comfort zone for the past few months. Now, something that you may need to know: what may be easy and normal for you to do may be a major challenge for someone else who has blocks around their worthiness, their deservingness, or their comfort zone. So for this client, for example, and she may be listening to this, but one of the things that I'm so excited and so proud of for is that she's finally going after bigger positions at work. Not at her work, but applying and sending in her resume for positions that pay more, that are more in alignment with her years of experience, her expertise, her knowledge, challenging herself to apply for positions that she may actually believe in a little bit that she's not quite qualified for, she's not quite worthy of, but she's going for it anyway. And we had to get clear on this and push her towards her limits or past her limits with her job. And she knew that she wants to move to a bigger city. She wants to live in a different city. She knows the city that she lives in is holding her back when it comes to her love life, her career goals, her finances, her lifestyle. And yet she has been in a small town for quite some time, and she's been at her job for quite some time. And she knows that with her years of experience, she could be making more money, which means that she could be living in a different city. She could be enjoying life more and taking more trips and doing more for herself. But she hadn't challenged herself to grow out of her comfort zone. So recently she started sending out her resume and applying for positions that she was excited about and that was challenging for her. And even looking at other opportunities in her career field that paid way more than she knew was even possible with her degree and with her experience. And so she started sending out her resume, and with the first job that she sent her resume out for, that she wasn't quite sure that she would be able to get a call back for, she got an interview already. Her interview is coming up very soon. Very excited for her. Now, whether or not she secures the position doesn't matter. What matters in all of this is that she pushed herself out of her comfort zone, stepped into becoming a bigger version of herself, and expanded her subconscious beliefs of what's possible. She saw that it's possible for her to apply for these positions that pay more, that offer more, that is more in alignment with her years of experience, and that she could actually secure interviews and get callbacks for them. She saw that there were growth opportunities in her career field that paid way more money than what she ever thought she could make. I think about 3 times as much that she's currently making, and she didn't even know that it was possible. So all of this possibility gets seeded, and that decreases doubt, that decreases the distrust, which allows you to break into your next level. Now, if she keeps going and she secures a position, that's going to allow her to step into a new level of financial abundance. But here's the thing, just stepping into the next level isn't going to be enough. She's going to have to still learn to create sustainable habits so that when she breaks into that next level, she's not falling back into the same financial scarcity and programs that she's been operating in for so long at playing at this level. So this is why reprogramming and rewiring your beliefs is so, so, so important. And we're going to be covering all of that on this podcast, and I can't wait to share it with you. So just remember, before we go, love and money aren't separate. They both reflect your relationship with yourself. They both reflect your beliefs, your patterns, and we are going to work to change that. You get to step into your worthiness. You get to have what you deserve, and you get to know how to feel safe with it so that you can sustain it and get off of the feast and famine cycle. I cannot wait to keep diving more into this with you. Make sure that you share this podcast, and please, 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 please leave a review on your podcast platform so that others can know about this. It's free content, and it's a way for us to continue to grow this community. And I would love it if you did so. And I would love to just hear your feedback of what you thought about this first episode. So here's a quick recap. Feast or famine is an emotional pattern. It's not your personality. It's not just what you do or who you are. You are able to change this and get off of the feast and famine roller coaster. Healing begins with identifying your love loop and raising your level of consciousness and awareness. And sustainable alignment in love and money, it's possible. And it's possible through emotional recalibration and identity work. If you enjoyed this episode, if you want to discover your love loop, go to the link in the show notes so that you can take the emotional pattern quiz, the love and money alignment quiz, and discover which of the 8 love loop archetypes you have. And you're going to get lots of content and information on that. Then also, I want you to apply to the Love Loop Collective. Come and join us in there. Connect with like-minded individuals. This is for men and women who are on the path to breaking into their next level, getting off the feast and famine roller coaster, and changing their patterns along the way. I can't wait to speak with you very soon. Thank you for tuning in this episode. I'll talk to you soon.